June 2021, Colorado Springs, Colorado. On our second week here at the Academy, I finally got to see Joe Makovsky, an old friend of mine from the Air Force when I served at Naviano. He stopped by for a short visit in the morning and we'll try to reconnect again before I leave. But today is a special day because it's our 26th wedding anniversary. And to celebrate our anniversary, Janet and I are driving down to the Iron Springs Chateau Dinner Theater. We decided to celebrate our anniversary with a good dinner, some good theater, and of course, a couple of bottles of wine. The evening's entertainment came in two parts. The first part was a comedic melodrama called Honesty Always Wins, or This Mine is Mine. We both enjoyed the story and the performance. It was a lot of fun. After the play ended, we had a short intermission, and then we came in for the second part, which was a vaudeville-style musical.
So if someday you're free, why don't you come with me and the boys and the pigeons in the bar? And maybe we'll do it a squirrel or two as the boys and the pigeons in the bar. We'll murder them all amid laughter and merriment,
except for the few we take home to experiment.
My pulse will be quickening with each drum of strychnine. We pay to a pigeon, it just takes a smidgen to boys and the pigeons in the bar.
It was a great show, and we had a great time celebrating our anniversary. But sadly, the evening did end, and we did have to go home. The weather here over the next few days was still pretty sad, so we decided to take more of a road trip and took a drive up into the mountains. Our first stop was Mueller State Park, and don't let the blue sky fool you, it was not that pretty. We were up at nearly 10,000 feet, and for the most part it was overcast. The temperature was between 45 and 52 degrees. Our first jump out of the car was eye-opening, not only because it was cold, but because the view was really beautiful. We did a quick look around, and we drove through the entire park, and then moved on to our next stop. And our next stop was the Mollie Kathleen mine to do a mine tour. First, it was very important to read the Bureau of Mines regulation governing the use of the elevator. Then it was time for us to descend into the gold mine, and you may have noted we actually put some jackets on this time. The mine tour was really cool, and our tour guide demonstrated the use of the equipment located in the mine. The noise level down in this mine was ridiculous. Our guide told us that most miners working back in the day were deaf within a few years of working in here. The tour of this mine was excellent and very informative. I would highly recommend it to anybody that's visiting this area. Once we got back topside, we explored the rest of this mine area, looking at some of the old equipment that they used to use, along with some of the old buildings that are no longer used, before moving on to our next mine. This next mine was the Newmark mine, and unlike the last one, this one is still working today. It's a pit mine, so it's way different than what they used to do back in the day. It was still interesting to look at it though. Having explored the mines, we then moved on to the mining town of Cripple Creek. Where other towns we explored had a main street loaded with shops and restaurants and maybe galleries, this one was wall-to-wall casinos. And although this town would probably be fun in the evening, for us it was time to enjoy a lunch with a view before making our way home. Okay, so now it's time for an interlude as I discuss my thoughts as I'm driving home. I'm thinking about signs. First, this one. Why did they have to specify pails and buckets? Aren't they both the same thing? Okay, windy roads, I've seen those. They're all over the place. And, yes, deer crossing. Very important. And, goat crossing? Okay, well now that's new. Now here's the main one that caused this interlude. Falling rocks. We've all seen these things, right? But has anybody ever seen these rocks actually falling, or know anybody who has? So I saw the sign on the road up in the mountains today and didn't think much of it until 2 miles down the road I saw this sign. Fallen rocks. Now you see, this makes more sense. The rocks aren't actually falling, they have already fallen, so be careful because they may be on the road. Well, anyway, end of the interlude and a quick look inside my mind. Makes me wonder how I get anywhere. So, a new day and a new adventure, and this time it's climb Pikes Peak. The drive up to Pikes Peak is about 12.5 miles up a very windy road. Now I'm not going to revisit my interlude about signs, but check this out. Bigfoot crossing. And check out the 6 feet away sign. I wonder if that's a COVID thing or just a general rule when encountering Bigfoot. Well, anyway, we did not see a Bigfoot, and we continue our drive up this beautiful mountain. We saw a lot of people riding bikes up the mountain. I am impressed. Let's not forget that this road is 12.5 miles long, goes up 4,700 feet, and ends at an altitude of 14,100 feet. There is no oxygen up there. I can tell you this because I was there. As you get near the top, there are no more trees. You are well above this tree line. And let's just say this road is just a little unnerving. You'd think they put in more guardrails because that's a drop straight down. Normally, you can drive all the way to the top, but this year they were doing some construction, so you had to stop 2 miles short and take a shuttle up the rest of the way. Part of the work was replacing the old summit house built way back in 1873. Even though the peak itself was a construction site, the view from the top was absolutely beautiful. We got there early enough so that the clouds were just starting to roll in below us. And at this altitude, it is cold. It was like 34 degrees up there, and there was snow to be seen, and this is June. For those that don't want to make this difficult drive, you can take the railroad, which will bring you all the way up to the peak. Oh, and there is life up here. Check out this yellow-bellied marmoth. We saw them all over the place out here, just hanging on the rocks. Anyway, time to drive down off the top of this mountain. And I'll tell you, if driving up was spooky, driving down was really spooky. This road is so steep that people tend to burn out their brakes on the way down, so they have this mandatory brake check where they check the temperature of your brakes before they let you move on. The Crystal Reservoir is another one of those places where you see a beautiful blue lake, but during our visit, the reservoir was drained so they could do some work on the dam itself, so no blue water. But that's okay, we'll just continue our drive and continue enjoying the view. Yesterday's adventure at Pikes Peak was spectacular, but today we're visiting Cheyenne Mountain. For those of you that might not know, Cheyenne Mountain is the home of Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Station and the home of NORAD. That would be the place where we would launch a nuclear strike if everything just went to total shit. We got a chance to get right up to the entrance of the mountain, but couldn't get any further. But let's face it, these folks up there have a beautiful view down the mountain from where they're at. Right next door is the Cheyenne Mountain State Park. Now this place we could go into and hike all over, and we did. This park has some exceptional trails that are really well maintained. Some are difficult and some are not. We took an intermediate one. And there is lots of wildlife up here. Do you see the deer in this picture? There it is. Now you'd think hiking Cheyenne Mountain there'd be some steep trails, and there are, but this was not one of them. This one traversed the side of the mountain. Although it did gain some altitude, it gained it gradually. After spending all that time hiking in the deserts earlier this year, this was a refreshing change. It is so beautiful and green up here that I just can't describe it well enough. Hiking these boulder-covered trails was not hard, and you could climb right to the top of some of these boulders. Woohoo! And so as not to be outdone, Janet found her own boulder to climb. On the way down, we looked for and spotted more wildlife. This time, a flock of turkeys. These guys are big. And so we ended our day sitting next to our lake, enjoying our lunch with a view. So today we start our excursion not with a cup of coffee. No. This is a cup of Maté. So we mix some yerba tea with some espresso coffee, mix it up with some almond milk, and call it a Maté. So don't get me wrong, it was good, but I think in the future I'll stick with coffee. So if you remember in the previous video, I said we would explore Miramont Castle. Well, today is the day. The castle has a very small garden right next to it. The garden itself is small, but really nicely manicured. The castle itself was really interesting to tour. A lot of neat things to look at. It was built way back in 1895, and it was built as a private residence for Father Jean-Baptiste. He was a French-born Catholic priest. This tour was a nice way to end our second week at Colorado Springs. So now we only have a week left to continue exploring this area. So, I hope we'll see you here next week for our final Colorado video.